Kelyn Spadoni attempted to transfer roughly $82 into her Charles Schaub brokerage account, but instead of transferring only $82, Charles Schaub accidentally transferred more than $1.2 million. She should have contacted the company and told them about the error. That's where she made a very illegal mistake. Spadoni transferred the money to another bank account and then bought a new car and house. Finding a lot of extra money in our bank account is a dream for plenty of people. However, this is something that does happen to certain people from time to time. You probably already know the procedure. You're not supposed to spend the money because obviously it's not yours. But what happens if you did decide to spend it? Is there actually a way to get away with it? Spadoni's spending spree didn't last long and the bank tried to take the money back. She got fired from her job working as a 911 dispatcher. The company tried to get in touch with her on numerous occasions, but she ignored them. Kelyn Spadoni was arrested in April of 2021 and charged with theft, bank fraud, and the illegal transmission of monetary funds. The bank ended up recovering at least 75% of the money. One Pennsylvania couple decided to test out being fugitives as well, when $120,000 was mistakenly added to their BB&T bank account by the bank. Instead of telling the bank, they just decided to go on a shopping spree. This bank error happened back on May 31st in 2019. One of BB&T's customers in Georgia made a deposit of $120,000. Everything went as usual, except the teller entered one number wrong on the account number. Instead of going into the correct account, the money was routed into the Williams checking account. Robert and Tiffany found out almost as soon as the error happened, and they went straight to spending. They blew through the cash quickly. They paid off bills, made repairs to their cars, and they even gave $15 grand to some friends who needed money. They also bought more car problems when they bought a new SUV, 2 four-wheelers, a camper, and a car trailer. Obviously, the big problem for them is that the money isn't theirs. They had to know they had to pay it back at one point, right? When the original customer finally noticed that the deposit hadn't hit their checking account a few days later, they contacted the bank to ask about the missing deposit. That's when investigators discovered the funds had gone into the Williams account. 3 weeks later, on June 21st of 2019, the bank finally was able to get in touch with Tiffany Williams. She told bank officials that they had already spent all the money. Yes, they had spent over $120 grand in 3 weeks. They racked up overdraft fees from the bank that roughly totaled $107,000. But Tiffany did make promises that she and Robert would agree to a repayment plan. How much did they have in their checking account before the teller's error? $1,121. Doesn't this sound kind of like when Harry and Lloyd put the slips of IOUs in the suitcase and promised to pay it all back in Dumb and Dumber? So why did the Williams even try to spend the money? Why did they try to run the scam? Both Tiffany and Robert told investigators that they knew the money didn't belong to either of them. Robert said, quote, "All I'm going to say is we took some bad legal advice from some people and it probably wasn't the best thing in the end. Even if someone gave them bad advice, they still have to make a choice and act on it. They still chose to spend money that they knew wasn't theirs." They both were arrested and then released on a bail of $25,000 each. Back in 2014, Stephen Fields had the same experience as the Williams when $31,000 was accidentally deposited into his bank account. As soon as he found the money in his account, he withdrew 20 grand in cash and spent around 5 grand on his debit card. But when the owner of the money started looking for his missing money, the bank put everything together. Eventually, they figured out that the money was deposited by the teller into the bank account of the wrong Stephen Fields. He spent most of the money on a BMW and blew through 80% of the deposit in 10 days. Obviously, he was caught. He ended up sentenced to 10 years of probation, and he had to pay back all the money he spent. If someone ever finds unexpected money in their bank account, there's no point to even asking the question. The answer is simply just no. They're definitely not entitled to keep the money. The money isn't theirs unless they're the intended recipient. That's because of a common law doctrine known as unjust enrichment. Basically, anyone who gets money wired by mistake is required to return the money to the sender. Or the cases where people who've received erroneous deposits and then spent any amount of the money found themselves facing criminal charges. Criminal charges vary by state, but the charge basically is theft. So who's responsible for replacing the money being put in the wrong account? The bank is the responsible party. They're obligated to replace any money that was deposited into the wrong account. So if this ever happens to you, you don't need to worry much. Your bank will credit your account when they discover the mistake. If the money was already spent by someone, you'd still be credited, and the person who spent the money will ultimately have to pay it back to the bank. Has anyone gotten away with money accidentally deposited into their bank account? Probably, but it's definitely extremely rare. However, it's a different story when it comes to corporations. When they accidentally make the wrong payment or deposit to another business, the rules are different. We'll get into that later in the video. For the average person, it's extremely hard, if not impossible, to get away with discovered money. If someone has gotten away with keeping money they found in their bank account, what most likely happens is someone just withdraws the cash and disappears. This is something that was much easier to do back before the mainstream internet. But now, in the digital age, it's just not worth it. If someone decides to cash out any accidental deposits, they'd basically have to make up a completely brand new identity with a brand new life. The truth is, any type of financial crime will eventually be discovered at one point or another. If it's a big accidental deposit made by the average person, they're going to tell the bank immediately. If it's a big business with an accidental deposit into the wrong accounts, it'll still be discovered through audits, even if it's years later. It's just a matter of time. Once the error is discovered, the transaction will simply be reversed. What if you don't plan on spending money you found? Before someone discovers missing money, you get the idea of moving the money into some sort of brokerage or stock account to try and earn some dividends. Even if you notify your financial institution about an erroneous deposit, you can't make money off the money sitting in your account. Apparently, doing so can technically still count as theft. But the rules are different for big business. So how come rules aren't the same for corporations? Here's one of the best examples. Back in 2020, Citibank made one of the biggest financial errors in history. Citibank was acting as a loan agent to Revlon, the cosmetics company. Citibank had meant to send about $7.8 million in interest payments to Revlon's assortment of lenders. However, Citibank accidentally wired over 100 times that amount. In total, Citibank accidentally sent $893 million to a bunch of Revlon's lenders. Some lenders did return the money, but other lenders didn't. Citibank filed a lawsuit in August of 2020 after still not getting $500 million from 10 investment firms after the accidental transfer. And most of the time, Citibank would be able to get their money back, but not this time. In February of 2021, a US District Court judge ruled that Citibank won't be allowed to recover the almost $500 million it accidentally wired. This is because of an exception that applied in Citigroup's case under a New York law. This law was brought forward by precedent in a 1991 case where New York's Court of Appeals ruled that if a third party mistakenly sends money to a creditor, the creditor can keep the funds. It's known as the quoted discharge for value defense. If the beneficiary is entitled to the money and didn't know it was accidentally wired, they can keep it. The Revlon lenders that didn't return the money said that they believed Citibank was wiring prepayments for a loan. After all, the money accidentally wired was the exact amount to the penny that Citibank owed them, even though the loan wasn't set to mature for quite some time. Citibank even made the argument that virtually no company would ever make such huge prepayments. They argued that many companies are still dealing with the financial impact caused by the pandemic. They specifically made the case that Revlon was too distressed of a company to ever make such payments. But the judge still ruled that the lenders were justified in keeping the payments and believing the payments were intentional. Click to watch one of these next videos. And let us know in the comment section where you would rather invest $1 million right now. real estate, crypto, or traditional stocks?